You wake up with thoughts already waiting for you. Before your feet touch the floor, you've already started rehearsing the day. What you didn't finish yesterday, what could go wrong today, and the quiet guilt of everything you've been avoiding. If that sounds familiar, take a moment now and subscribe to the part of you that's tired of running in circles. You think about your schedule. You think about your goals. You think about the version of yourself you said you'd become by now. And yet, you still hit snooze. You still scroll. You still move through the morning like someone watching their own life from the outside. You're thinking, constantly, but you're not choosing. Not really, because there's a difference. And you can feel it. There's a gap between the thoughts that fill your mind and the direction your life is actually going. You plan, imagine, intend, but you delay. You weigh every option, but never commit. You analyze your future, but stay loyal to your patterns. It's a kind of passive living that looks like effort, but is really just mental noise. And beneath it, a deeper exhaustion. You tell yourself, I just need more clarity. But what you really need is to decide. Somewhere along the way, you confused thinking with movement. You confused analyzing with acting. You started mistaking mental activity for progress. But here's the truth that's hard to swallow. You can be incredibly self-aware and still stay stuck. You can spend years understanding your fears and never choose courage. You can know exactly what's holding you back and still let it. That's the pain no one talks about. When your inside outpaces your choices, when your mind is full, but your life is still on pause. Covey once wrote, between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space lies your power to choose. But most people never stop long enough to enter that space. They're too busy thinking, not feeling, not deciding, not choosing. So let me ask you, what thoughts have been circling your mind lately that you've mistaken for decisions? What have you convinced yourself you're working on, when in reality, you've been delaying the one thing that matters most? Choice. If that question stings, stay with it, because this isn't about judging yourself. It's about finally meeting yourself in that space where the real shift begins. Let's go there. Thinking can feel productive. You make lists. You analyze every angle. You replay conversations, anticipate outcomes, calculate what-ifs. It gives you the illusion of progress, like you're doing something with your life. But here's the trap. Thinking is not choosing. You can live entirely in your mind and still never change your life. Because the real transformation doesn't come from what you think. It comes from what you commit to. We've been taught that clarity comes before decision, that we need more time, more understanding, more certainty. But the truth is often the opposite. Clarity comes from commitment, from choosing and letting the consequences shape you. There's a kind of paralysis that happens when you over-identify with your thoughts. You believe that because you're thinking deeply, you must be evolving. But thinking doesn't build confidence. Thinking doesn't create momentum. Only choosing does. And choosing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet moment where you finally delete the app, or say no without guilt, or stop explaining yourself. It's not that you don't know what you want. It's that you've been afraid to choose it. Because choosing means letting go of every other option. And that feels like loss, even if the option you're holding on to is pain. Here's the hard truth most people avoid. You are already choosing, every day. Every time you delay action, you're choosing comfort over growth. Every time you tell yourself, not yet, you're choosing familiarity over transformation. Your inaction is not neutral. It's a vote. And your life reflects the sum of those votes. Covey's work reminds us that we are not simply products of our conditions. We are products of our decisions. But if you don't own your decision-making, your conditions will do it for you. And you'll wake up one day having lived a life full of thought, but empty of authorship. There is no perfect time to choose. There is only now. And the moment you realize that, the illusion begins to crack. You start to see that your overthinking wasn't protection. It was procrastination in disguise. So let's ask the question again. What are you thinking about that you haven't truly chosen? And what would shift if you finally did? There's a moment, a small, often unnoticed moment, that happens between something you feel and the way you respond to it. Most people never notice it because their life is a chain of reactions. Someone says something, they get defensive. An opportunity shows up, they hesitate. A thought appears, they obey it. But what if you could stop right there? In that invisible space between what happens and what you do about it? That's where power lives. Not in controlling the world, but in owning your response. One of the most powerful truths you'll ever accept is this. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who observes them. And if you can observe them, you can choose how to respond to them. That's not just mindfulness. That's personal leadership. That's the difference between drifting and directing. Covey called this proactivity, but not in the busy, hyperproductive way we often think. It's not about doing more. It's about leading from within. It's about saying, I choose my thoughts. I choose my language. I choose my values. And I act in alignment with them. Not with fear, not with habit, not with urgency. Most people wait to feel ready before they act. But people who live by principle don't wait for the feeling. They make the choice first. And the emotion follows. That's the true meaning of freedom. Not doing whatever you want, whenever you want, but living in alignment with what matters most. Even when it's hard, even when it's slow, even when no one else understands, your thoughts are going to keep coming. Some helpful, some limiting, some noisy, some wise. But you don't have to treat them all as commands. You can interrupt the old patterns. You can pause and say, this thought is not aligned with who I'm becoming. And just like that, you step out of the current and into clarity. The power to choose was never gone. It was just buried beneath habits, fear, and noise. But now, it's back in your hands. So take a moment right now and tell me in the comments, what's one thought you're ready to stop obeying? And what are you ready to choose instead? So how do you stop living inside your thoughts and start choosing the life you want? It begins with small, deliberate interruptions. Because patterns don't break themselves, they wait to be interrupted. Start here. Before you react, pause. Just 3 seconds. 3 seconds between the feeling and the decision. You don't need to figure everything out in that space. You just need to claim it. In that pause, ask yourself a quiet question. Is this thought helping me become who I want to be? You'll be amazed at how often the answer is no. And in that moment, you don't have to argue with the thought. You just don't follow it. That's how identity starts to shift. Not by force, but by gently choosing something different. Over and over again. Another powerful tool. Set an intentional identity alarm. Once a day, let your phone ring with a custom reminder. Who are you being right now? Not what you're doing, not what you've achieved, but who you're being. It's a jolt, the kind that snaps you out of automatic living and reminds you that every moment is a decision. And the more you choose consciously, the more you become coherent with your future. Try this too. At the end of your day, write down just 2 thoughts you noticed yourself obeying without question. And then beside them, write what you could have chosen instead, not as punishment, but as practice. This isn't about guilt. It's about awareness. Or take it one step further. Pick one belief you're tired of carrying. Something like, I never finish anything. Or, I always mess things up. Then rewrite it. Not into a perfect affirmation, but into a direction. Something like, I'm becoming someone who follows through, even in discomfort. That's real. That's yours. Put it on your mirror. Say it before bed. Say it when you feel resistance. Say it until it stops feeling foreign. You don't need to fix everything today. You just need to stop confusing thought with choice and start letting your choices lead the way. Every time you choose from a place of awareness, you're not just changing your behavior, you're changing your identity. That's how the shift becomes sustainable. It doesn't start in some distant future. It starts now, in this breath, with one honest choice. Take a moment. Let the noise settle. Let the to-do list pause. Let yourself, even for just a few breaths, be still enough to feel what's actually happening inside. This isn't about motivation. It's about honesty. Ask yourself gently, where in your life have you been thinking, but not choosing? What thoughts have you been living with quietly, passively, as if they were facts? What stories have been repeating in the background, shaping your days, your energy, your voice? Without your permission? Maybe it's the belief that you'll never catch up, or that no matter what you do, you're still not enough. Or maybe it's that silent idea that you need everything to be perfect before you begin. These are not just thoughts. They're agreements. And some of them you never consciously made. They were passed down, absorbed, repeated, until they became a part of you. But they don't have to stay. Not all thoughts deserve to become your identity. Not all of them speak the truth. So pause. Look at your life without shame, just with clarity. What have you been postponing? What emotion have you been avoiding? What conversation with yourself have you been too tired to have? There's no judgment here. Only this. You are more than your default settings. You are more than the script you've been reciting for years. You are more than the fears you've dressed up as logic. The first step isn't action. It's awareness. The kind of awareness that sees without flinching, that holds space for the hard truths without trying to fix them all at once. This is that moment. The pause. The breath. The mirror. And maybe this isn't the first time you've heard these things, but maybe this is the first time you've let yourself feel them. That matters. If this moment opened something in you, if it slowed you down in a way that felt real, go ahead and tap the like button, not to support the video, but to quietly affirm, I'm still here, I'm still listening, and I'm ready to meet myself honestly. At some point, you stop trying to improve your life, and you start changing the way you see yourself, because transformation doesn't last when it's built on pressure. It lasts when it's built on identity. It's not enough to choose a new habit. You have to become the kind of person who lives that habit, not out of force, but out of alignment. You don't follow through because it's written in your planner. You follow through because it's written into who you are. Think about this. A person who sees themselves as scattered and inconsistent will sabotage even their best plans, because their mind is loyal to the identity, not the strategy. But when you begin to shift the inner narrative, when you start speaking and acting from a place of coherence, everything changes. You no longer say, I'm trying to be disciplined. You say, I'm becoming someone who keeps their word to themselves. That shift may sound subtle, but it's everything, because it means you're no longer chasing a version of yourself. You're embodying it. And yes, it takes time. And yes, you'll have days where the old self pulls hard. But now you're aware. Now you recognize the voice of resistance. And you don't have to mistake it for truth anymore. You're not just thinking differently. You're choosing from a different center. That's the power of identity. It gives you something stronger than motivation. It gives you consistency. It gives you direction. So who are you becoming? That question used to feel overwhelming. Now, it feels clarifying. Because you've stopped waiting for a perfect moment to begin. You've stopped waiting for the voice of doubt to disappear. You've stopped treating action like something separate from who you are. You are no longer someone who reacts to life. You are someone who responds. With clarity, with purpose, with intention. That's leadership. Not over a team. Not over a business. but over the inner terrain of your life. And when your thoughts, your choices, and your identity begin to align, you stop chasing transformation and start embodying it, because you're no longer thinking about change. You are becoming it. There's a kind of thinking that feels deep, but goes nowhere. It loops. It questions. It analyzes. But it never decides. And then there's a different kind. The kind that gets quiet, still, focused. The kind that leads to a choice. Not because everything is clear, but because you are. That's where you are now. In that space between one life and another. Between the self that hesitates and the one that leads. You've thought long enough. You've circled your fears. You've delayed the moment. Now, you choose. Not perfectly, not permanently, but powerfully. Because from here on out, you don't follow your thoughts. You guide them. You train them. You root them in purpose. And you let your choices speak louder than your noise. This is what alignment feels like. Not a lightning bolt, but a steady breath. A quiet yes. A decision made in the dark. That keeps lighting the way forward. So if something in this video moved you, if it gave language to a truth you felt for a long time, take a moment now and subscribe, not out of impulse, but as a small act of alignment. One more choice, one more step, and when you're ready, don't stop here. Continue your journey of growth by watching the next video in this series. Because clarity doesn't come from thinking harder. It comes from choosing better and becoming on purpose.